Who's to blame for the housing crisis?
It's a process that prioritizes the views of people who already have a home and doesn't prioritize your needs as someone who wants a home. If there's an apartment viewing, you'll have a line around the block just to get the opportunity to rent that apartment.
Yeah.
That is really embarrassing and sad, and that's not a functioning, good society when we have that.
Why can't I buy a house? What's wrong with California?
Yeah, so
I should go to these housing meetings to meet a husband.
yes.
Is America dying?
Um,
Does freezing the rent actually help?
so it,
So the elites and the boomers are ruining everything.
but the thing is, what kind of people are moving in? Are they going to be renters? We don't like
Renters.
renters.
Will Poff-Webster.
Hi, Caitlin Bork. Sorry, is that
I'm trying to decide whether I want it to be Bork or Borky. I always grew up with it being Borky,
Yeah.
but then kids would call me like Sporky or Dorky or Porky.
Oh, well, we're too old for that now.
I know.
would hope.
But if you were to hear a name, Caitlin Bork feels so much more regal than like Caitlin Borky, right?
I mean, I'm older than you, so I grew up hearing about Bjork.
Oh,
So it makes
my
you think you're
God.
Icelandic or something.
Yeah, I mean, I love
Yeah.
Bjork.
There you go.
I could do that. So Will works at a think tank. Can you explain to us what a think tank is?
Yeah, so
I
legit,
really don't.
when you told me you wanted to ask this, I put on Slack to my colleagues, hey, what actually is a think tank? Because I'm new to it. I worked in local government for a city councilor, in state government for a state legislature, and in Congress, and I just left to work in a think tank pretty recently. So I don't totally know, but I can tell you my impression so far.
Wait, who knows?
No, but I sort of know what a think tank is.
Okay.
A think tank is an organization of people who think of good policy ideas and suggest them to people in government, policymakers, to try to get them to do things.
Do think tanks have agendas?
It depends. I think a lot of think tanks will tell you they don't have an agenda at all, but usually they have some kind of agenda, but it might be pretty broad. It might be IFP's agenda where I work is we should have a more prosperous America with more innovation and sort of, be a more innovative country that can progress, right? So that's kind of general. There's a whole lot under that. I do the housing, transportation, energy stuff, but there's other people working on other stuff.
Okay, interesting. Housing.
Yeah.
Why can't I afford one?
So the short answer is the Karen on your block.
The Karen?
Yeah.
Oh.
So when I worked,
it's not just the grocery store or the restaurant or the gas station. She's also a reason why I can't afford a house.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Okay.
Most decisions about how and whether and how much housing to build are made on the local level in the US. So your local city councilor is deciding, and sometimes it's not even them. It's a volunteer body of neighbors who have a community advisory board. And when I worked for the city councilor in the neighborhood where I grew up in Boston, my job was to 2 or 3 nights a week go to these meetings of community boards about zoning. And you show up to these meetings, and I was always the youngest person there by 20 years. And
of course.
The way they work is there's maybe 20 people there, and half of them are sitting at a table, and they're the deciders, and half of the people are in the audience, and they're the people who maybe are mad or want new housing, but almost everyone who shows up is mad and doesn't want new housing. And the reason is because on about every block in a city or suburb or whatever, there's going to be one really annoying person who doesn't want anything to change and doesn't want any new
change is scary.
Yeah, totally, right? So maybe it's unfair to call that person annoying, right? She doesn't want a rat infestation on her street from new construction, right? It's just a frustrating thing to deal with.
I mean, I think rats are kind of cute, to be honest.
My wife is a single issue voter in local elections for whoever will get rid of the rats.
Could we gene drive? Could we?
Do people know? This is her buzzer.
This is a buzzer that I hit whenever someone uses jargon. I would expect it to be you, but I've done
such a good job. I haven't used any jargon, and you are. Well, there's actually a really simple answer to rats, which is you just need a metal trash can that has a lid that closes fully.
That's it?
Yeah, I
That's
mean, that's what
literally
New
it?
York's doing. It seems to be working pretty well. We don't
Yeah.
need anything fancy, but most places have plastic trash
But
cans.
who's gonna walk me home when I, like, kinda drunk and I'm, like,
The
walking home
the
from the
rat
pizza
is
place?
walking you home.
Yeah, I feel, like, very watched out for. Like,
Wow,
I hear the scurries and I'm
that
like,
is not most people's
if
experience.
someone robs me, they're gonna witness it, and at least some living thing will be able to
There
witness
you go.
my
Well,
tragedy.
so sometimes we really need community input and engagement, like on rat problems, right? Cities don't solve them very well. You need people to complain.
Mhm.
But when it comes to housing, the people who complain tend to be people who already own a house and they don't want anything to change in their neighborhood. And so I would go to these meetings, these zoning board meetings, 2 or 3 times a week. And every time there'd be one person trying to build a house. Maybe it was a family that wants to add a backyard cottage for their grandma. Maybe it's like a developer trying to build a 10 house small apartment building.
Mhm.
And basically everyone else there was trying to stop them from doing that. And you would hear all sorts of things. It would be like, this is going to be a shadow on my tomato plants.
My god.
Where are they going to park? This is going to bring riffraff to the neighborhood. I didn't hear that so much because I was in a very progressive area, but it's a
Mhm.
common thing you hear generally. This is going to, what kind of people are moving in? Are they going to be renters? We don't like renters
Renters. Are
here.
you a renter?
I am no longer a
Oh my
renter as of
god. Oh,
recently.
this
Yeah,
God,
I
that's so
know.
exciting.
I know.
I will forever be a renter, I think.
Well, the many people will, right? It's a big problem.
Yeah.
Um, the only reason I could afford a house is my mom got in a terrible car accident. She got this big insurance payout and she
Okay.
was like, I want to help you buy a house. And I was like, thank you. This may be the only way I would ever be able to buy a
Oh my
house.
god.
So,
That's so scary.
yeah, well, so back to the
Yeah,
policy.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So you go to these meetings and basically, and they're meetings from like 6:30 or 7 to
Mhm.
8 or 9 p.m.
Mhm.
So they're not meetings any normal person would go to.
Yeah.
Who wants to spend their evening doing this?
Yeah.
Unless it's literally their job, like it was my job.
Yeah.
And the most cantankerous person in your neighborhood on your block is going to show up and not want any housing built. And that person is very likely, there's legit studies on this, that person is going to be retired.
Mhm.
They're going to be a homeowner. They're going to be wealthier than average for the area. They are overwhelmed. They're more likely than average to be like a lawyer or an architect or someone who just has persnickety taste.
So the elites and the boomers are ruining everything.
But the thing is, they're not really elites. They're kind of normal people,
Mm.
right? They're normal people who've lived somewhere a long time and don't want anything to change. And our system in America gives those people the power to decide whether you get a house.
Why?
Because the way we used to do it was arguably even worse, which is
Mhm.
that the government would come in and they would say, we're going to bulldoze your whole neighborhood
Mhm.
to make way for a highway. And that was really bad.
Yeah.
So in order to stop that, we kind of went too far in the other direction. And now we can't build anything anymore.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What is the sweet spot?
Well, okay. So I'll try not to make you buzz me. So personally, I think the sweet spot is that we should empower elected officials to make decisions about how many homes do we want in like the whole city and the whole state?
Mhm.
How do we make sure that young people don't have to move away? How do we make sure that elderly people get to downsize and get to stay in their community? How do we make those kind of changes so that we're solving like the big societal problems that come with not having enough housing,
Mhm.
like homelessness, like things like that, without every single project being stopped by a Karen or something like that?
Yeah.
I also have a couple good friends named Karen, so I feel a little bad saying that.
Sorry, Karen.
You know,
It's so unfortunate.
people of all names and of all demographics stop housing, although they are disproportionately likely to be existing homeowners who sort of already got it. So I think you turn it from something where someone who already has a house gets to decide this is going to slightly inconvenience me, therefore I'm going to stop it from happening, into something that just is actually a topic of political debate at a level of government where more people pay attention. Like your local neighborhood volunteer person is never going to lose office because they don't even have office.
So how do we change the incentives so that the Karens want more housing built? Because they're the ones who are in control, you're saying, right?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think the main way to change it is just don't have those people in control.
Oh my
Like
god.
instead
That's gonna piss them off.
we'll have us all in control, right? Like
Yeah.
most things in America are decided by majority vote. They're not decided by a random self-selection of people that decide to come to a meeting from 7 to 9 p.m.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what our healthcare policy is, or whether, like who's going to be president, or how much money is spent on transportation. Like those are all things that are decided by the people we vote for, like your elected officials, your state legislator.
Mhm.
So personally, I think we should have a little more of that. Now, it doesn't mean you should have no local input from the community people who live nearby, but we should recognize that most local input is not representative of the people who live there. Like the number of renters who show up to these things is very, very low.
I've never been to one of these things.
Right?
Ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet that, I mean, I went to these. Very few people under 40 go to these. And those were where the decisions are made about whether you get a house.
So if I'm looking for a husband, I should not go to these things?
I mean, depends on the age of a husband you want. If you want an elderly husband who owns a home, maybe you should be going.
Honestly, that's the only way I'm going to be able to get a house.
No, we can reform these policies because here's the other thing about it, right? There are a lot of neighborhoods where there's a bunch of houses, they're next to each other, and you're like, this neighborhood's full, there's nothing we can do. But usually in those neighborhoods, there's a parking lot that's barely used. There's a vacant lot that hasn't been built on because people show up and they're mad at whatever might be built there. There's also a lot of air on top of those buildings. Maybe those buildings are like 1 or 2 stories.
Yeah.
Turns out you could just build an extra story and all of a sudden you create twice as much homes for people.
What about the noise?
Yeah. I mean, look,
construction noise.
Yeah. Well, so
Am
this
I
is
a
the
Karen?
thing.
I don't like construction noise.
Well, this is the thing, right? There are actual trade-offs involved. It's just a question of like how much you care about not having homeless people in your city and you being able to buy a house versus how much you care about construction noise, right? If you think about where there are homeless people in the United States, there's actually very few homeless people in West Virginia. People in West Virginia have pretty low incomes by the national average. There are unfortunately pretty high drug overdose rates, alcoholism rates, but there are a lot of homes in West Virginia. There are as many homes as there are people, just, households, just about. In San Francisco, very few homes for the number of people there are. And so people don't have access to a house. Really what typically happens is you'll have hardworking people who have a job, then they fall behind on their rent, something happens in their life, then they move on to a friend or family member's couch for a while, then eventually they're not able to stay there anymore, and then they become homeless. The reality is most people who are homeless are not from somewhere else. They're probably from your city, and they're homeless mostly because of economic reasons. It is true that there are like problems with drug addiction and stuff like that, although those sort of things can also arise after someone becomes homeless because that kind of sucks. So anyway, it's a hard problem, but it has an easy answer, which is just build more homes. Like I used to work for the senator from Hawaii, and in Hawaii, there are fewer homes built every year than there are people graduating from high school. So some of those people who graduate from high school are just going to be kicked out of the islands.
Wow.
Because there's not enough,
Is there not enough space?
Well, you could build up again.
Yeah.
Or you could build out. You can't build out that much in Hawaii, right?
Like very tiny.
Yeah, and it's a really beautiful place and you want to protect nature. So another reason you might want to do these kind of reforms to let people build more housing where there already are homes is so that you can protect nature, so that you don't have to drive super far to get to a nice forest or, a cool like hiking spot. Because instead of clear cutting that whole area and building one house on a whole acre, you let people build a small apartment building or something like that. But it is a hard political problem because people do have other interests, right? Like people care about a lot of things. One of the things they care about is their kids getting to buy a house or them getting to buy a house or them having a place to live. But another thing they care about is that they don't want a ton of noise next to their house at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
They don't want to have to circle the block a million times to find a place to park. So you do have to solve those problems for people in order for things to work. And it's not crazy to say, hey, maybe you can't bang a hammer at 6 a.m. Maybe you can't do it till 9 a.m. If you can tell I'm a little bit of a night owl, I'd rather they not do it really early in the morning.
So they could do it at 11 p.m. and you'd be fine with it?
I would be fine with it. I think most people would not. So probably we don't do that either, right? Stick to daytime hours.
Some people would argue, why don't homeless people move somewhere else?
Oftentimes, someone will be homeless, but they'll have a job. So they're already working in the area. They can't really move. Usually, statistically, most homeless people grew up in the place where they become homeless. So in that metro area. So they're not going to want to move to a place that they don't know anyone, right? People want their community. They want their ties, especially if you're going through a hard time. You want to be around people you know and love. Maybe you're getting help from them. Yeah, I think there's a misconception that a lot of homeless people are coming from somewhere else, and that's usually not true. It's not unheard of, but it's not common.
Who's to blame for the housing crisis?
It's a process that prioritizes the views of people who already have a home and might be slightly inconvenienced by building a new home for you, and doesn't prioritize your needs as someone who wants a home. That's basically the reason, right? We don't make housing decisions the way we make most other decisions in the US. Instead, those decisions tend to be made by the people who show up, and the people who show up are overwhelmingly people who already own a home and don't want their neighborhood to change. Bottom line is we don't have as many homes as we have people who want homes. And so the people who want homes each have to bid for a house. So in places that don't have enough homes, like San Francisco and New York, if there's an apartment viewing, if there's an opportunity to rent an apartment, you'll have a line around the block just to get the opportunity to rent that apartment.
Yeah.
That is really embarrassing and sad. And that's not a functioning good society when we have that. In other parts of America, we don't have that because we let people build houses.
But what about, what is it? Blackstone, Blackwater, BlackRock,
Think
something.
of Blackstone.
Which
Are you gonna
there's
check
a
this?
chart that
Yeah.
tells you exactly which one it is. Blackstone?
Yeah.
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 What about Wall Street buying up all these homes?
Yeah.
Like, is that the real reason why housing is so expensive?
So in a word, no. Those kind of big corporations own less than 0.6% of the single family homes. And maybe it's 0.7% now of the single family homes in America. So
Wow.
they're just not most of the houses. It is true that there are some downsides of having a big corporate landlord. Like they are more likely to evict people than a small mom and pop landlord. They're also more likely not to discriminate against you on the color of your skin or whether you're queer or whatever. So there are like pros and cons to having a big landlord. But the thing about housing, there are some industries in America that are super concentrated. So like in the meat industry or whatever, there's like 4 companies that do it all, right? In airlines, there are not a lot of airlines. In housing, everyone and their mother is a small landlord. There's a ton of them around. So they can't really collude against you. There's maybe some small things that like, you know, sometimes people talk about there's this rental software that landlords use to each figure out what other people are doing. Maybe that kind of thing should be banned. But personally, I think the thing that would make the most difference is if you actually legalized enough homes being built that landlords are competing for tenants, not the other way around.
Damn. Yeah, that sounds it sounds like it makes sense.
But it's not as nice as, oh, we get to blame like evil faceless corporation. Like instead, you're blaming the like nice old lady at the end of your block who organizes the block party, but also just really wants to make sure she never has to wait more than 2 seconds to park.
Oh
Right.
my God.
And that no one wants to blame. Like
Okay.
she's nice.
Will, are you just a simp for landlords and developers?
No. So I actually used to represent tenants in court when they were being evicted by their landlords. And I did this during COVID. So it was really tough if you got evicted in the middle of COVID. So personally, I'm very pro tenant and I don't really care about landlords. Sometimes
You don't tip your landlord?
No. Here's a little pro tip for your audience.
Uh-huh.
In most of America, and at least in most cities, your landlord is required to give you interest on your security deposit. This is like one of the things I learned as a landlord rights lawyer.
What?
So you give your landlord a security deposit.
Yeah, it's like, $1,500 or something.
When they give it back to you, in most jurisdictions, in most places, they are required to put it in like a savings account and then give you interest. It's not a lot of money, but if your landlord ever tries to screw you out of something, you can be like, hey, you didn't give me interest.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's like a nice little thing to pull.
That's insane.
Yeah. So anyway,
Oh my goodness.
I hope I've established my pro tenant
Yeah, okay.
cred here. But the thing is, the real way to help tenants is empower tenants to tell their landlord to take a hike if the landlord tries to raise your rent. Where I grew up in Boston, people cannot do that. If your landlord raises your rent, you're like, I can't find another place to live. I'm just going to have to cut back somewhere else. If you live in Austin, Texas, almost the same name, but different city, there I have seen TikToks and reels about people celebrating that their landlord lowered their rent. Have you ever heard of this?
Yeah, okay. So
people will be posting that they got a notice from their landlord and it's like, your rent is going down by $100.
Why does that happen in Austin but not in Boston?
Austin built a lot of housing.
Is that literally it?
Yeah. I mean, I think if you look in the studies and stuff, it is a little more, there are a variety of things going on. I think investors and developers built a lot all at once, and so it went down. Basically, the way it works is if there's a lot of people who want to live in a place and the local or state government says it is legal to build more homes in that place, then rents are not going to go up that much.
So it's illegal
or they might
to
even
build
go down.
homes.
Yeah. If you really want the short answer to why you can't afford a house, it's because we made it illegal to build the thing that we say we want. Like if you walk outside here right now and you look around, Probably you can't build a house taller than it already is. Probably you can't, build closer to the street. Like you got to build 2 parking spaces for every
Wow.
unit of housing. There are places in America where every bowling alley needs a parking space for
What?
like every alley of the bowling alley, right?
I
And
didn't
it's
know
like
you.
assuming no one ever takes an Uber, right? These
Yeah.
rules come from the 1950s and they've never been updated. There's all sorts of crazy stuff out there.
Is America dying?
No, but we could be doing better.
Like, are we sick?
I mean, I think our housing policy is sick because we haven't updated it for the problem we have, which is that people want to live in cities again. People want to live in
Why
the
do people want to
suburbs.
live in cities?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, cities are nice now.
Mhm.
People used to be fleeing cities because they had lots of crime.
Is that why my parents like are so terrified when I move to a city?
I think have they been here?
I
Have they
mean,
walked around with you? It's pretty nice.
my dad doesn't leave the 3 counties that surround our county, and he's never left the country. I don't think he hates noise and
And that's
stuff.
okay.
Yeah.
Basically, my take on this is there are all sorts of types of people in America, and some of them, they really hate noise. They really hate, they love the woods. They want to be in the woods. We have a lot of housing for those people.
Mhm.
Like pretty easy to build in some rural areas. Not enough, like if you talk to Habitat for Humanity, they'll say it's actually hard for them to build enough affordable housing in rural areas too.
Mhm.
But in general, there's more housing in those places. But there are also some people who want to live in like a suburb near the city or in the city themselves. And those people, usually it's very hard to find a place to live because we just don't build enough houses every year.
So we're getting kind of to the rural urban divide, which also, especially recently, has become the Republican Democrat divide.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a coincidence that is Austin run by Republicans?
So it's an interesting situation where the state government is run by Republicans and the city government is run by Democrats.
Okay.
But the Democrats actually understand that they should have regulations that allow affordability,
Mhm.
which is not something that Democrats everywhere in America understand. And the Republicans at the state level think, oh, we want to protect people's private property rights. And it turns out that combination of Democrats who really care about whatever will cause
Mhm.
affordability to be the outcome and Republicans who want to protect private property rights, that results in renters having lower rents. So it's pretty nice.
So cool.
Yeah.
How do we get that everywhere?
There are both very blue and very red places in America that have gotten this right
Mm.
and that have gotten this wrong. If you look at Minneapolis, they decided during the like George Floyd moment when they really, people were really thinking about how we had racial injustice in America, they decided that they had a history of racial segregation in their housing. They had decided that certain neighborhoods could only have big fancy houses, and guess who gets to afford those? Typically it's wealthier people. Typically those people are white in Minneapolis. And so they decided that they were going to do reforms to allow more housing to be built pretty much everywhere, but especially along big roads.
Mhm.
They would let a bigger building be built. So it wasn't right next to your mom who doesn't want new housing. It was like a few blocks away from her, right?
Mhm.
Maybe it's next to some commercial property or something. And they did those reforms. And now housing in Minneapolis has not gone up very much in the last decade, right? If you live there, your housing is still pretty affordable. If you make substantially less than the average person, you can still afford a house in Minneapolis.
And that
Um,
isn't the case.
that is not the case in California or New York or DC.
What's wrong with California?
Yeah, so
Give me a
California
bad guy. Tell me who
California
to
doesn't
blame.
let you build any housing. They make it illegal to build a house, right?
Mhm.
Like if you go to San Francisco, it's crazy. It's the wealthiest city in America.
Yep.
Every time they have a big company go public, like one of the AI companies, like Airbnb went public, and prices for a house in San Francisco went way up because all of a sudden all these software engineers had way more money than they did before. And when that happens, there are not more houses in San Francisco than there were
Mhm.
before. There are just the same number, and there's more money competing for the same number of houses. So then what happens is if you're a teacher or a firefighter or a service worker or a waiter, you have to move hours away and you have to drive hours to get into the city
The
every
same
day.
thing is happening in Michigan, in
Yeah.
Traverse City.
Yeah.
Traverse City is like this. We always hated Traverse City growing up because they were wealthy and like cooler and like had better like.
In my neighborhood, we felt that way about Brookline, Massachusetts.
Oh, okay, wait, where are you from?
I grew up in Jamaica Plain,
Okay.
which is like a neighborhood that used to be poor and then sort of gradually has gotten richer. So like my parents bought their house when it was pretty cheap, and
Mhm.
now their house is worth an insane amount. And they're like, "How did this happen?"
Mhm.
And it's sort of crazy.
Yeah.
And I was part of the high school newspaper, and we would have newspaper competitions, if you can believe it, with the suburban high schools. And we would
Yeah.
always lose. And we said it was because they printed in color and we didn't have money for color. It's because they had higher property tax revenue from all those fancy houses over there.
That'll do it. We did not have a ton of revenue from property taxes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but Traverse City did. Everyone lives in Traverse City now. It has the highest percentage of like millennial millionaires.
Oh, wow.
Um,
But does everyone live there, or did just rich people live there? Because they don't build enough housing.
in Traverse City,
Other
no.
people live there.
The teachers and the firefighters and then anyone who is like middle class people, they have to move out. They have to
Yeah.
drive in every day. And it's
Yeah.
just like, and
Yeah.
the traffic is terrible because, it's right on the water.
And
so
the
it's like
traffic
one
is
thing.
terrible because so many people have to drive in. They don't get
Yeah.
to live near where they work. Yeah, it's not a good situation. The interesting thing that's happened in the US since COVID and before, a little bit before COVID, but especially you can think of COVID as a big change here, is we used to talk about how there was a housing shortage in the big expensive cities in America. So like San Francisco, Seattle,
Mhm.
DC, New York, Boston. And that's actually changed now. Now there's a housing shortage across most of the country. And the reason is now a lot of people, mostly rich people, can work from home. So they're moving out to places like in Michigan or Montana or whatever,
Yeah.
and they're raising the price of housing in those places. And then the people in those places are realizing, oh shit, actually, our zoning is also bad. We've also made it so that we can't build any more houses. We just never had a problem before because people weren't moving here. And now they are. And now, we have free movement of people in America. Like you can't say no one gets to move here from California. It's against the Constitution.
Yeah.
So if you don't build any houses, you don't make it legal to build any houses, and people want to move to your state from somewhere else, then you're just going to be kicking out your poor people.
So when Fox News like pans footage of California with a bunch of homeless people and they're like, this is Democrats doing, is it just like mostly a coincidence that those cities are ran by Democrats and that other cities in the country, especially in like rural areas where Californians are moving to, are just going to see the exact same thing happen?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence. I think it's a result of policy, right? Like Democrats want to have the right regulations to help people flourish.
Mhm.
And typically we've gotten it wrong on housing. We've thought that the right regulations are regulations that stop people from building because there's some downsides of new building, like new construction does have environmental consequences. People locally don't like it. But it turns out when you do that, the downsides are way bigger, right? If you don't let people build in a city, then they're going to have to move into a rural area where there might be wildfires, and they're going to have to drive into work and emit things from their car. And they're going to, they might become homeless and contribute to a rising homelessness crisis. So the solution is new, right? And it's a little weird for Democrats to be thinking, oh, wait, actually, the solution here is I need to let the private sector do more. Like, I think that's a little uncomfortable. But the reality is there are a lot of people in America who would like to build houses and they don't get to.
Do you think the left cares about inequality at the expense of caring about poverty?
Oh, wow.
It's kind of a jargony word.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it is important to care about both.
Mhm.
They both seem to cause social problems. Like people get mad when the difference between the rich and poor is huge.
Yeah.
But also it just really sucks to be in poverty. Like it's not an experience that anyone should have to live through.
Yeah.
And there are parts of America where it is you can get by on not that much money. Like on average in America, people's top cost every month is their house or their rent,
Mhm.
their mortgage payment, their rent. Their second highest cost is their transportation costs. So it's their car payment, it's gas, it's wear and tear on their car, or it's paying for like public transit. I think public transit is probably cheaper. So
Yeah.
so those are the two highest costs. And if you live in Austin, Texas, not to bring them up again, and you make less than the average salary, you can afford those things, right? It's actually okay. If you live in California, you can't afford those things.
Wait, why is a car more expensive in California, or like transportation?
Well, if you have to drive 2 hours to work every day,
Yeah,
you get more wear and tear on your car. You have to pay for these really high gas prices. So
it's a trade-off. You either walk to work and pay a gazillion dollars in rent, or you live in a cheaper place and you pay like a gazillion dollars in gas.
Or you live in a place that's done zoning reform, and then you can get it all. Like,
why can't we? Where's this magical place?
Well, Austin, Texas, Montana did it. Minneapolis did it. Like,
Mm.
it's not a foreign concept. There are places in America that have done it, but California has only taken baby steps, unfortunately. They have done good things. There's a state senator in California named Scott Wiener who's done an awesome job trying to make it cheaper. Like the one thing California has done well is they've actually made it pretty easy to build a backyard cottage.
Mm.
If you have a pretty big lot and you have space in your backyard, that you can build what's called an accessory dwelling unit, like an extra unit.
Like a camper?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, usually they're built into the ground, but it's like maybe something in between a tiny home and like a normally sized house.
Mhm.
And it's sort of funny. The way California did this is they passed a law at the state level in like the 80s or 90s or something that said, hey, we think this is good. Local governments, can you please let this happen?
Mhm.
And then it turns out local governments mostly respond to the people who don't want anything to be built.
Mhm.
So local governments like, yeah, you can build this, but only on top of a cemetery or only in a only if you have like 5 parking spots for every
Why?
little house you build, because they don't want any houses to be built,
Wow.
right? There's a small percentage of people in America who just genuinely do not want any new houses to be built in their backyard near them. So what California has done is then they realized, oh shit, the cities are actually not implementing this law the way we thought they would. They passed another law. They said, no, you really have to do it this time. The cities sneakily found other ways to get around it. They said, you can build a house, but you have to donate $200,000 to the city government for the water and sewer costs of that one tiny
Oh
house
my God.
if you build it or whatever. And so still no homes got built. And then after like 15 years and 8 different state laws, something like that, finally California has made it so you can just legit build something in your backyard.
Wait, what did
and
they have to
can't
do?
anything.
Did they just make 0 loopholes?
Yeah, basically. They just
Wow.
did like whack-a-mole every single new
Uh-huh.
bad idea that the city did. They said, no, you can't do that. And now finally, there's this very cool business of these small businesses in California that are like, hey, we can put up something in your backyard if you want.
That's
So
cool.
now 25% of all homes built in California are these accessory dwelling units in your
gosh.
backyard. But the reality is the state needs to do a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Like Massachusetts, where I'm from, they just started trying to make it legal on the state level to do accessory dwelling units. So that's very exciting. I sort of think of these backyard cottages like the gateway drug to
Yeah.
building enough homes. It's like kind of the first easy thing to do.
Mhm.
But really what you need to do is you just need to make it legal to build more housing where people want to live. Like we need to care a little less about some of the, frustrations that come with new building because we need to care a little more about our neighbors.
Wow. Are you Christian?
Yeah, I'm a Quaker.
You're a Quaker?
Yeah, my
Oh my
mom's
God.
family is from Pennsylvania.
Oh,
So
wow.
she grew up Quaker. And I think Quakerism is super cool because it's like a kind of Christianity where you think that like the light of God is in everyone. And so,
So special.
yeah, so like a Quaker
Oh my
service
God.
is a bunch of people sitting around, and then when like you feel like someone is speaking to you, then you stand up. If God is speaking to you, stand up and you tell people.
You go to the Quaker church here?
Yeah, I haven't gone very often, but
I
I should go more. The problem is when I was a kid, it's like a challenging place to be a child because I was a very loud child and you're supposed to be quiet and listen to God speaking to people. Right? So, there's a great scene in Fleabag about a Quaker meeting. So if you haven't seen Fleabag, I would recommend
Wow.
it.
What does the left get wrong about housing?
So I think that people on the left often think that we can solve problems in America with more money, problems that solve poor people. And it is true that there's a part of the housing crisis that can really only be solved with money.
Mhm.
And that's the
Like spending taxpayer
Yeah,
dollars.
spending taxpayer dollars,
Yeah.
spending like tons of money at the federal level, at the state level, at the local level. And the part of the housing crisis that you need to spend money to solve is the problem of someone just making not enough money to afford a house, or someone can't have a job because they're disabled or they're elderly.
Mhm.
And so they can't hold a job and they just don't have income and they need income to afford a house. For that problem, which I would call the affordability crisis or problem, you need federal or state or local money to go into that. But there's a whole nother problem in housing that I'll call the housing shortage. And that problem you actually can't solve with money because the more money you throw at it, the more the landlords are just going to raise the rent. And if there's no more homes going around, then they can just raise the rent as much as the federal government gives money or the state government gives money to solve it. So like Kamala Harris had this idea. She was going to give $25,000 to every person like you and me who is hoping to buy a house. And guess what that would have done in middle class parts of Michigan? It probably would have meant you can buy a house more easily. Guess what that would have done in San Francisco? It would have just raised the price of literally every house by $25,000.
That is so dumb.
Yeah. So
Did she have it? She should have had you on her staff.
I guess.
Like, why
I
don't
mean,
they get this?
well, I
It's
think
like it seems obvious when you say it like this.
I think people are starting to get it. I
Uh-huh.
think people are starting to wake up to the fact that, like, if you just literally don't build enough homes for the number of people who want to live in a place, then there's no amount of money that will let those people afford it.
Mhm.
But you have to do a couple leaps of logic to get there.
Mhm.
Like, the simplest thing to say is just give people money and then they can buy a house. And unless you kind of think about it a little bit and you think about, oh, my landlord might raise my rent and then could I move? Unless you sort of go through that, then you're not going to realize that it
But
won't solve the problem.
isn't it the job of politicians to go through that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, speaking of politicians, person who a lot of people think of when you think of housing, like bringing the cost of housing down, is Zoran Mamdani.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Freeze the."
Rent.
So catchy, man! What a good comms person. Um, does freezing the rent actually help?
So it depends on who you're trying to help and how long. I'm sorry, this is like a push the button, annoying wonk answer.
It's okay.
So if you're a person who loves your apartment and wants to stay forever, then freezing your rent might be great for
Mhm.
you. Um, there is a problem even for that person though, which is that your landlord might no longer want to invest in making the house nice anymore because they can't actually raise the rent to cover it. If you're a person who might want to move to a better apartment later, or you're a person who doesn't live there yet and wants to move there, freezing the rent doesn't really help you very much. So there's a real trade-off here. I think rent control is one of those things that's like short-term benefits, long-term costs,
Mhm.
because it makes it so that people don't want to build as much housing as they did before.
Mhm.
Because if you build housing, you won't make any money or as much money building housing. And
So
turns out you'll make just as much money building a data center. So why wouldn't you just build a data center instead of a house? We're not freezing the rent on data centers, right?
wow. So we just have to accept the fact that people will get rich from building housing, and that's okay because that means we get homes.
I mean, is it okay that grocery store owners are rich and we get food?
Yeah, I agree with this.
Yeah.
I think American dream, but a lot of people on the left, they think if building 1,000 homes for someone means that this guy gets a few gazillion dollars.
He probably won't get a gazillion dollars from a
Well, I don't
thousand
know what
homes
a
unless he's building in San Francisco. Um, but think about it. People really like there are more than 1,000 homeless people in San Francisco. Those people could really use a home right now.
Yeah.
And I care more about those people than I do about someone getting rich. I should say though, there is also a way to build housing without anyone getting rich.
Hmm.
It's called social housing when the government builds housing. We used to do this in America. We built a lot of public housing in the 30s and 40s.
Hmm.
We don't really build public housing anymore. We don't even pay to maintain the public housing we have,
Hmm.
which really sucks if you live in public housing. The problem with that is it's really hard for the government to build things. Even things the government has to build that no one else can build, like public transportation. The government spends so much more in America to build it than it should. It's like 3 times cheaper to build public transit in Italy or Spain than it is in the US. So if we want the government to be building housing, which the private sector can also build it, so we don't necessarily have to, but if you don't want anyone to get rich, the government needs to build the housing. If you want that to happen, you need to reform other things about government to make it possible for government to build. You need greater state capacity in the government. You need to like pay people in government more. You need to make government more effective.
I mean, growing up, I always heard in my spaces that I was in, I always heard, government employees get paid quite a bit. Government employees get paid way too much.
Yeah, that's not true. The thing people typically don't want to hear is like a lot of government employees are for the kind of jobs where you need a college degree to do it. And maybe you shouldn't need a college degree. Maybe we should get rid of those requirements.
Hmm.
But as long as those requirements exist, they are not making as much as they would in an equivalent job in the
Hmm.
private sector. And especially at the sort of like superstar manager level, like the CEO of a public transit system should make way more money than they do because they're in charge of whether we get to work on time, you know?
Yeah.
Like the CEO of Delta makes way more money than the CEO of the DC Metro.
Isn't it that the people who take the metro in New York is equal to the number of people who fly in airports across America every day or something? What was this?
Oh my God, you have the stat written down,
I
right?
have every day. The New York City subway serves more passengers than all American airports combined.
Yeah, no, I think that is a crazy stat because if you think about most Americans don't fly, right? It's like not a very common thing to,
Mhm.
people maybe fly occasionally, but not all the time unless you're like a fancy business traveler. And if you live in New York City, you're probably taking the subway to work every day.
I did.
The
Yeah.
crazier stat for me is people can say, oh, New York City is an outlier. You know, it's the biggest city in America. But in Houston, where most people own a car, people love to drive. A lot of commuters from what is it? Half of commuters in the
I think
suburb?
it's more than half of suburban commuters to downtown take the bus in
Yeah.
Houston.
Thank you for citing the thing that I wrote and I forgot about. Yeah, and so and why do we need that, right? It's because once you start to do the things that I'm saying will cause housing to be cheaper,
Mhm.
like build more homes. Turns out there's like a lot of space on top of your house. You could just build a 2-story or 3-story house and you can get more house out of that and more
Mhm.
people get to live there. Well, then you do have more people living in the place. And so if everyone owns a car and everyone needs a parking spot, you're going to get a lot of traffic. And like in New York City, if everyone drove into Manhattan, they would need to pave over the entirety of Central Park, and we couldn't have a park. Instead, we just have a
Really?
parking lot. Yeah, and wouldn't that suck? Like people love having parks near their house. So the solution there is when you have more people living near each other, you also need to have public transit.
Mhm.
And the reason people take the bus in Houston is it's easier than driving. Like you get to be on your phone, you
Mhm.
get to read a book. You might have a lot of times there's like a lane just for the bus, so the bus goes pretty fast. People are stuck in traffic, but the bus gets to go.
Wow.
And the great thing is it's good for drivers too, because then there's not another person in front of you. Instead, there's 50 people on the bus not competing with you for the road space. So it's cool. But we
Wait,
need to be
so
doing it more.
so like a lot of people say that college were like the best 4 years of their life. Do you think that's because they lived in a walkable community?
I mean, I think there are a lot of cool things about college that people like, but one of the things, part of the reason I love doing housing is that so much about the built area around you dictates things about your life. Like a thing that is true when you live in college is most of your friends are a walking distance away from you.
Mhm.
It's also true often if you go on a vacation to like a fun vacation destination. Like I went to Puerto Rico recently, and if you go to the old city in San Juan, like before there were cars, everything is close together, you
Mhm.
know, and you might know your neighbor and you get to like chat with them right
Mhm.
across the street. If you know take like a honeymoon to Europe or something, like people love to vacation in the kind of places where things are walkable and
Yeah.
it's fun and you get to see things on the street, and we make it literally illegal to build that in most of America. It's not allowed. Yeah.
That's so dumb.
Yeah. You know, can I tell you the kind of rules we have?
Yeah, yeah, go for it.
We have a rule that says there's a street. If you want to build a house, your house has to be like 20 feet back from the street. So you're forced to have a lawn that you have to mow every day, even if you don't really want to mow your lawn.
What?
Um,
Wait, why? Why? What's the purpose
it's
of
called
that?
a setback requirement. It's because there's someone on your street who's a busybody who's like, I don't want people living too close to me. You better put them away. Right.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
we have rules that say that if you build a house more than a couple stories, you need to break up the front of the house. So some parts of it need to be bumped forward and back. And it creates these really ugly buildings where there's like metal bump outs on them and stuff, and
Mhm.
it looks terrible. We have a rule that says you need a parking space for every bedroom in your house. If you
Wait,
have a 5 year
where?
old, they need their own parking space.
Where?
In like a lot of suburbs, there's rules like this.
That
Um,
is so
they're changing. Smarter places are changing toward only one parking space per home, or no parking spaces in a place where people use the bus or
yeah.
subway.
Do you want to hear some crazy regulation bullshit?
Absolutely. Is this
This
about bananas?
what?
Marie Gluesenkamp Perez in Congress has this whole thing about like childcare facilities can't feed kids bananas.
Wait, what?
I
Why?
think it's not actually true. I
Is that a
think
real?
it's fake. But
I might look it
but
up
it's
then.
like it's something about how like if you start a childcare facility, you have to follow like commercial grade kitchen rules. And opening a banana is like food preparation unless you have like two stoves. You can't do it. I don't know if it's real.
Okay, this camera that I was going to talk about the banana thing, but this
Oh yeah.
camera it stops recording after 29 minutes
Why?
because if it records for 30 minutes, it's considered a video camera. And in EU regulation, I think they were like, um, they were like, we don't want to pay taxes or like follow the regulations for it being a video camera.
There are a lot of housing rules that are like this.
Like really dumb.
Yeah, like if you build less than 100 homes, you get easier regulations than if you build 100 or more homes. So like tons of
What?
housing buildings are 99 units, so you're just under
Really?
the cliff.
Oh
Yeah,
my God,
that's
why?
like legit exactly the same.
What about the elevator one? You told me about an elevator
Oh
one.
man. Elevators in the US cost 5 times more than they do in the rest of the world. It's crazy.
Is it because we treat our workers so well?
No, I wish.
Is it
That would be
because they're
nice.
super nice, shiny elevators?
So kind of. So we require elevators to be way bigger than they do in other countries. And we do this for like a decent reason, a good reason. The reason is we want someone in a wheelchair to be able to go in the elevator and then turn around and be able to like push the buttons and leave the elevator. We also want EMTs to be able to put a stretcher down in the elevator, right? So it's smart to have these rules. Like it's nice. It helps with safety. It also has costs. And the cost results in a lot of the smaller buildings in America that would have an elevator in Europe or Asia, they just have zero elevators in the US. So if you're a person in a wheelchair, you're just out of luck. And that is way worse than just having a smaller elevator. So guess how they solve this problem in Europe and Asia and everywhere else in the world?
How?
They just put the buttons on the side of the elevator. So if you're in a wheelchair, you can still press the buttons. You don't have to turn around. And it's not as nice an experience for a wheelchair user. They would prefer an elevator where they can turn around for sure. But they would prefer an elevator to exist at all. So there's a cool reform some people are talking about that says for these smaller buildings that usually in the US just don't have elevators at all, let them build small elevators like they do in the rest of the world. And that would be nice, right? But a lot of times in building code, land use, regulatory policy, we're not thinking about the trade-offs, right? We're not thinking about what's the cost, what's the benefits. Instead, we're just thinking, oh, there's something that would be nice about this. Let's just make it cost more. And we don't really think about the downsides of the cost, that your apartment in any building with an elevator is going to be more expensive. Your small buildings are just not going to be wheelchair accessible in the slightest. We don't think about those trade-offs. I have heard someone say that one way building codes get decided in the US is whoever shows up and has the bigger mustache decides in the building code. Because you'll get these like old gruff guys who've been building forever and they show up and they're like, we need these rules because we've already had these rules. And it's like, he has a big mustache, we better listen to it.
Wait, what is the mustache thing? Is it just,
I don't know, just like, if you're like an
it's just
older guy
arbitrary
in construction, you are more likely to have a mustache. Maybe that's not true anymore. Now, like it's a hipster thing to have a mustache. But a cool thing that's happened, speaking of hipsters, a cool thing that's happened in America in the last 10, 15 years is people our age has started deciding, they've been like, I've never been to a zoning meeting in my life. And they started showing up and they've been like, hey, wait a sec. You're the reason I can't afford a house. I want to be able to buy a house. Could you please build some more houses here and not like prevent every house from being built because someone has a little persnickety issue with it? Like I get people have problems, but let's try to get to yes. Rather.
So I should go to these housing meetings to meet a husband.
Yes, you might. Well, you might blow your brains out if you go. But there are these cool groups around America that are parts of these organizations like Welcoming Neighbors Network and YIMBY Action. And there's a bunch of people.
Wait, what's YIMBY?
Oh, that means yes in my backyard.
I finally got you.
Yeah.
Finally got it.
You got me. And the reason for that name is that the people who don't want more houses often say, I support more houses being built, but not in my backyard. Do it somewhere else. And so what YIMBYs are saying is, yes, I want more housing because I want more affordability for myself, for my neighbors. I want a more vibrant community because there'll be more people walking on the street. There'll be more support for small businesses. I want people to be able to live.
It'll be like college.
Yeah. And,
walkable community.
Maybe not everyone likes college, but here's my like biggest point here. You don't need to change land use everywhere in America for every person. If you just do it in the places people want to live, you solve the whole problem, right? You do it in the cities, you do it in like the suburbs that are close to cities, you do it in rural areas that have an affordability crisis because you can't even repair your house because the rules say you need like to comply with all these rules even to repair your house. If you do it in those places, then other people still can live in a place where, there will still be places in America to move if you want 20 feet between you and any other building at all times. Right? But then other people get to live in a place where it's more affordable.
That seems great.
Would be nice.
That would be nice.
Well, and I say that wistfully, but it doesn't have to be wistful. Like there are places that are doing it already.
Like Austin.
We just have to copy them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, young men in this country just really are not doing well. Like it's getting harder to find good paying jobs.
As a youngish man, I hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like especially if you don't have a college degree, you're just that never used to be the case. Or at least it used to be less. So what gets me is that we desperately need houses. We need people to build these houses. We need to build them quickly. And there are young men who are just like, yeah, I would love to work. And then I don't know, we make it illegal to build houses.
Yeah. Well, if I can do a stat
Yeah,
for
yeah,
you.
yeah.
So between 1980 and 2000, we built a fair number of homes in America.
Mhm.
And then between 2000 and 2020, we built 15 million fewer homes. And it's not like the population of America was going down in that time, right? Like
Oh my
people were
god.
having more kids. Um, and so that is sort of the root of the whole housing crisis. We just build fewer houses, especially in the places that people want to live, the places where the pay is the highest, where you might want to move to make more money.
Mhm.
So think of all those jobs that would exist if we had built 15 million more homes in that time than we did.
Yeah.
It's a huge problem, and it's a good paying job. You know, it's a cool job. Like personally, I love building things with my hands. I was a big Lego kid when I was a kid, and it's too bad that that job is not as common as it used to be. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but it mostly exists in the same quantities in the places that don't have these really restrictive rules that stop you from building things. But I guess, the real thing here is there's a lot of problems that are really complicated. Like what's the right healthcare system in
Oh my
America
god.
is complicated. Like I work a lot on how do you make it cheaper to build public transit, like cheaper to build a subway. That's actually a complicated problem. There's like 6 different causes, 15 solutions. With housing, it's actually really simple. How do you make it affordable for a middle class person to buy a house?
Mhm.
You just got to make it legal to build more houses. How do you make it affordable for a working class or a low income person? You got to have government subsidies, government money for them, right? That's the answer. And it only takes a sentence to say it.
Wow. So if it's so easy, that's why you're working on transportation policy, because housing is just like solved. It's done.
Well, no, I mean, it's it's solved in some places, but in the places people most want to live, it's not solved. And I think, to try to have empathy for people who oppose this, it's often they feel like no matter how much housing they build, there's just always going to be more people who want to move there, and
Yeah.
there's no way to solve it, right? But the fact of the matter is, like, a lot of people are moving away from those places because we don't build enough, and every extra house we build makes it just a little bit cheaper for the next person, for your own kids, for it to work. So even if it is hard to solve the problem completely, I think we haven't solved it because it's conceptually easy, but politically very hard.
Yeah.
Like
We have Karens. Karens are.
I used to work for a city councilor, and there was one time that some people on a small street in Boston, they really wanted to build a house for their grandma,
Mhm.
and they went to their local zoning board, and the zoning board screamed, "Hell no!" And then they went to the city councilor, and the city councilor said, "I really believe in you. I want to support you doing this."
Mhm.
And so he helped get it through. And then
Wow.
those neighbors on the street were like, "We're gonna run someone against you," right? And
Oh my god.
the person did not win, but it totally ruined my former boss's summer. He had to spend every day campaigning and didn't get to hang out with his wife. And so, like those sort of things affect
Mm.
local elected officials. And they're like, my life is going to be absolute hell if I say no to the not in my backyard people in my neighborhood. The path of least resistance is just to say yes and do what they want.
Wow.
So I think the real answer is it shouldn't have to be that person's job. We should decide on a state level how many homes we need, and
Mhm.
we should just figure out a way to get the regulations right to build them.
Mhm.
Um, but if we have to keep it at the local level, then people like you and me need to show up and say, "Hey, I kind of want a house too. Maybe this is more important
Yeah.
than a little bit of noise between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m."
Hmm. So the most Christian thing that people can do is slash regulation for housing.
Well, I used to go to these zoning meetings,
Mhm.
and they were at a senior center in my neighborhood.
Mhm.
And so at the back was there was this cool sign, and it said "Be kind" in big gold
Oh
letters.
my god.
And I would see the people in front of that sign being so mean to each other.
Yeah.
These neighbors were not loving each other.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
were
yeah.
like, "How dare you try to build a house for your grandma?" And
Wow.
it wasn't always that way. There were people trying to get to yes.
Mhm.
There were people pushing back and saying, "Hey, we want poor people to be able to live in our communities. We want elderly people to be able to stay and not have to move away." But those people at these meetings typically are in the minority, and the minority are the hell no caucus.
Yeah. Something I've seen on social media is people in the comments of videos are saying that immigrants are responsible for the housing crisis. If we had fewer immigrants come in, then we'd have more housing for people. Is that
That's not really true. It is true that if you make it illegal to build houses and then you have more people who want to live in those houses, then prices are going to go up,
Mhm.
right? But it's just as true if people have babies as if people move here. It's the same problem. Like we talked about how in Hawaii, more people graduate high school in the state than there are homes built every year. So the root problem of more people chasing not enough homes is real. It's like sometimes people compare it to musical chairs,
Mhm.
where like in musical chairs, you have 10 people chasing 9 chairs,
Oh,
right?
oh, yeah.
And so there's just not enough chairs for the number of people. So one person is going to be out of luck and not
Mhm.
get a chair. And that's the way housing is in DC or San Francisco or
Mhm.
Boston or New York. But that's not the way housing is in Austin or most parts of Ohio or, some parts of Michigan. And those tend to be places where a lot of immigrants live that don't actually have a housing shortage. So we know that some places immigrants live have a housing shortage and some places don't. So it doesn't seem to be the immigrants that are causing the problem. It's something else causing the problem. And the thing that's causing the problem is we make it illegal to build houses for immigrants or people born in America.
Yeah.
The other problem with blaming the immigrants is 1 out of every 3 people who builds houses is an immigrant. So if we want
Yeah.
to maintain an industry where we build houses, that seems important. If we want to grow that industry, we might even, we might need more native-born workers. We might need more immigrants to build the houses. This is a problem that is not hard to solve, except for the fact that you don't really get to blame. There's not an easy person to blame.
Mhm.
Instead, it's just a problem of like you try to figure out how to build a house and you got to look it up on a website and there's 2,000 pages of every little rule
Mhm.
that says how you need to clip your grass and what color your windows need to be and all this crazy stuff in order to build a house.
Will, you worked in Congress for 2 years, 2.5. Is our government broken?
I guess I would say kind of. Um, it's really hard to do things in government, and that's very frustrating. Um, but there are still things happening. Like there's this big housing affordability bill
Mhm.
that's going through the House and the Senate right now.
Will it make housing not so expensive? Will I be able to afford a house if this passes?
It'll make housing less expensive than it is now.
No, but will I be able to afford a house?
I don't think it goes far enough to help you.
Do you know how much money I have?
No,
It's nothing.
that's
Actually,
okay.
I actually think
Yeah.
I have debt.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of Americans um, who need more money to be able to buy a house for sure.
can they make houses free for people with debt?
That would be pretty hard. You need to spend a lot of money. I mean, one synthesis of everything I've been saying is like, there's literally no amount of money that would make houses free in San Francisco. But you could make anyway. We should probably this is not going to happen. The federal bill would make houses a little more affordable, and there are other bills like that that do pass Congress. Like things are still happening,
Mhm.
but they're not happening as much as they used to, and they are very hard to do, and so that is sad. There's more happening in state government. Like state
Mhm.
governments, I think still mostly work. Federal government, it's like pros and cons. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Okay. What do you think the federal government is really good at doing?
Ooh, I mean, I don't know. We have a pretty powerful military. Um,
Fuck
uh,
yeah.
like, some things have changed recently, but like all weather data in America is based on stuff the government does.
Really?
Census is pretty good. Yeah,
That's so nerdy.
the federal government is pretty good at giving out. No, it's not very good at giving out money anymore. There was all
Yeah.
this money spent during the Biden admin and it never got to people.
Yeah.
Some of it did, but not enough. Yeah, what else is the federal government good at?
Good at spending money?
But not always,
No, it's good at spending it, maybe not giving it out.
Well, but then the money doesn't get spent, right?
Oh, interesting. Well, doesn't it just get lost somewhere probably?
I mean, no, like actually the federal government is pretty good at not being corrupt. There's a lot of protections against corruption. More than people think, right? Like there have been changes in that respect that are not great, but
Mhm.
there's a lot of laws against that, which is good. Maybe they need to be enforced more. This is not really a good answer. What was your question?
I don't
I can
remember.
try to answer it. What does the federal government do well?
Yeah.
What does the federal government do?
They are they're good at going on television.
You mean the politicians?
Yeah.
I do think that a problem we have is that there's a significant percentage of people in Congress who no longer see their job as writing and passing bills and instead see their job as going on television. And it's a pretty big divide because there's some people still really trying to pass bills and then there are other people who don't really care about that. And so that's a bummer. We need to elect
Can you
more.
name names?
I mean, like, I think it's just like a lot of the people who are most popular online who are the people who are not uh, trying to pass bills, but not always. Like, there are some people who, like, I think AOC is like pretty good legislator. I don't know that for sure. I worked in the Senate, not the House, for instance.
Are you a lib?
Yeah.
But you want to build things.
Yeah. Both and.
You think we should give people health care and we should let developers and realtors become rich.
I mean, the key thing for me is when looking at any policy, what is the outcome we want to achieve? right? And the outcome I want to achieve is houses being affordable for everyone. And how do we get there? It's like a mix of things, as I said, right? Like the traditional lib answer is give people money, but that's not going to work on its own. You also have to reform regulations to make it easier to build houses. And if you do both those things, we can solve the problem. If you just reform the regulations, you solve the problem for the middle class. If you just give money, you solve the problem in the areas that don't have a regulatory problem.
You don't care about the snail darter fish, do you?
Well, I mean, actually, I think endangered species are really important. Like the most important,
Really?
yeah, the most important thing about it is, and I'm not an expert in this, but I think that there are a fair amount of drugs, like pharmaceutical advances that come from various species, right? I think there was some sort of animal that did something like Ozempic and we like figured out how to do it because of that animal.
Wait.
So I actually think protecting endangered species is super cool and
So
important.
endangered species could like cure cancer
Maybe,
or
maybe someday, yeah.
could make me like a foot taller or shorter.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I want to be taller.
Can I tell you my beef with our current environmental laws, though?
Yeah.
They don't really think about can you mitigate the problem. So it's like you are not allowed to kill any endangered species, but you could actually spend a lot of the money of your project building, like protecting the habitat of endangered species. My least favorite court case I've ever read, because I had to go to law school, so I had to read all these court cases. And my least favorite one is one from Ohio where there was someone trying to build a wind farm and they were protecting hundreds of acres of land for this endangered bat. They were going to like protect the habitat for this bat, let the bat live in this area. But they were also running a wind farm. And so some bats are going to fly into the turbines and die.
That sucks.
There was a study that the judge said, you should have studied what if you just turned off the wind farm at night. And if you turn it off at night, you'll kill a few, maybe 4 fewer bats, right? And so the wind farm got stopped because they hadn't done that study. They hadn't, exhaustively studied every effect, even though the wind farm was also protecting hundreds of acres for endangered bats, which is going to save way more bats than the wind farm is going to kill. So personally, I would like to protect the environment, but also allow us to build.
About it?
Yeah, allow us to build energy, not be stupid about it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Outcome over
Would be nice.
Signaling. People love to be like, no, I stand for this thing.
But the real way to stand for the thing is to get people what they need to get, like get the energy we need, get the housing we need.
Yeah.
And we can do that. And we can also protect the environment. Like that's a really important thing, right? Most of the building that I think needs to happen is not in places where there's any nature other than public parks that are, curated by like the government, right?
Do you think the fact that Democrats have kind of overregulated everything is one of the reasons people don't like them as much anymore?
I think that people look at their local and state government and they feel like it doesn't work and they get really frustrated and they don't want to vote for whoever is in charge. And the people in charge of most big cities in America are Democrats. And so we as Democrats need to take a look in the mirror and be like, how do we actually solve people's problems? But we can.
Wow.
It's not hard. Just literally take a trip to Austin or look at a reel of someone in Austin whose rent is going down.
Yeah.
Like it's easy, but it requires going to a meeting and having some people yell at you.
Last question. How do we fix vibes of the Democratic Party?
I think we fix vibes by solving people's problems, right?
I mean, that's why people love Zoran Mamdani, because I don't know if he's fixing people's problems, but his comms team really makes it seem like he is. Like he's like, we're going to shovel snow. We're just going to make shit work,
I said earlier, my wife is a single issue voter on getting rid of the rats. She tried to buy a new trash can from our local government. She sent in a $90 check to get a trash can. It had to be a paper check. There was no way
Are you
to
serious?
do this. I think this is true. I need to check with her to make sure it's true. And then they were like, sorry, we're out of trash cans. We can't give you a trash can. Right? And that's crazy.
Why
We should be able to give people trash cans.
Yeah.
Like there are certain things about government that should just work. And I appreciate that Zoran is focused on that stuff. He's also focused on building a lot more housing. It's awesome. In New York City, they are proposing elevator code reform. You know
Oh
what
my
the
God.
real problem is here? The ways you solve people's problems are usually pretty boring. Like it's hidden on page 535 of the zoning code or deep in some elevator code developed by a bunch of old people with mustaches.
So we need better comms people who know how to take that and frame it into something spicy.
Or we need people who are willing to be boring. Or we need the boring. We need the boring people. All the boring people unite to solve these problems. I feel like I could be boring. What do you think?
Maybe. I don't know if you need to be boring though. We can have both. You can be entertaining and also fix people's problems.
Yeah, and like there are places that have made their regulations pretty simple. Like they're not hard to understand, they're easy to do. Um, one of my favorite things about my former mayor, Mayor Michelle Wu of Boston, is when she first started, she was like a fellow intern at the city, and
Mm.
her job was to pretend she was starting her own small business
Hmm.
and go and try to do it through the city bureaucracy, and it was a total nightmare. And so now she's trying to reform it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
Because
she also, yeah, we need to build more housing in Boston too. There's a couple problems. There's
mm,
not just one.
so many problems. All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
This
thank
was
you.
very good.
This
I
is
will
great.
edit the shit out of it. And yeah.
Cool. Nice. Were you just humming Mulan?
Yes. Wait, one more. Okay.
Nice.
Uh,
All right, making it happen. I've been trying to become a Twitter person
mhm.
because I've worked in government for like 10 years.
Yeah,
So like
yeah,
all I have done is retweet my boss
yeah.
like for 10 years.
Wow.
And now Alex like, "Hey, you can tweet on your own." And I'm like, "Oh shit."
So I have a buzzer.
Oh, sweet.
Say the word abundance.
Abundance. Should I do something when you buzz?
Uh,
Was this my idea?
yeah.
Oh my God, I'm still on here. I'm just warning you, I'm pretty good at not using jargon.
Yeah?
Yeah. Because I
The
like,
word jargon is pretty jargony.
I feel like, yeah, maybe.